Hi there, welcome to another Blue Zoom on what's been another very busy week with the arrival of a new manager, departure of an old one, and joined, delighted again by the man they call Foxpunter, Mike Holden, Man City fan, but he really knows about the profiling of football managers, which is a really interesting approach because you get a bit deeper into who these people are and what kind of job they're going to do. And Mike, we were on a while ago talking about Wayne Rooney, and some of the comments that came out of that on YouTube on my channel were, this is going to be a disaster, and they weren't wrong. Just before we talk about Mowbray, what did go wrong? Do you think, and were you surprised?
Yeah, no, I wasn't massively surprised, but just basically from the Birmingham fans' perspective, it became quite apparent quite quickly that Rooney had it all to do, in terms of trying to get everybody on side. He didn't really make enough attempts to do that. It seemed quite quickly that Birmingham fans' worst fears were coming to pass. Within 2 or 3 weeks, it became quite obvious. And then it was a matter of, could he hold on until January? Would he still have the backing of the club until January?
Yeah.
And it was a surprise, if anything, that they waited until the very eve of January before they actually pulled the trigger. So, but yeah, it's not a massive surprise once you'd seen the first 2 or 3 matches.
Yeah, timing was strange when he came in. Timing was a little bit strange when he left as well. But once the fans turned, and that was at Leeds on Boxing Day, was it? That was the end of it, really. And when the owners know that the customers are not happy, that's the end of things. So Mowbray comes in. I mean, you part of your profiling is you've been doing this big thing about the self versus the tribe, and we decided that John Eustace had been the man about. He put the tribe first. In other words, he put himself within the whole and whole with a W, and this is us together. Whereas Rooney was, this is me. You're gonna. How can you please me? And it went wrong. So, what is Mowbray then? Is he a tribe man? Is he we're all in it together?
Okay, it's interesting because he is self-above tribe like Rooney. However, he's very different to Rooney in that regard. In the workplace, I think what it means is in Mowbray's case, he likes to get to know people individually on an individual level, on a very deep level. He likes to know what people like and don't like and connect with them on that basis. It's not necessarily about the football and are you made of the right stuff? Are you? He inherently believes that everybody's made of the right stuff. I can work with anybody. Everybody's here because they've got a talent that, you wouldn't be at this level if you weren't able to do your job. Now it's my job to bring the best out of you as an individual and do that for all the players in different ways and even down to the backroom staff and everything. He just wants to go into the workplace and bring the best out of everybody at what they do, what they uniquely bring to the table.
Yeah, he's been going around sort of having individual meetings. Interesting that has come out the last 24 hours that he's keeping, for the time being, Ashley Cole, John O'Shea, and Pete Shuttleworth, who are very much part of the Rooney setup. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's in keeping with Mowbray in that I don't think he's somebody that goes to, relationships have to break down first before he will consider changes. Everybody's on my side until they show that they're otherwise. And then I'll look to make changes if it's necessary, if something's not working. But I don't think he's a big one for change. Overhauls, squad overhauls, backroom overhauls, or things like that. I think he just loves getting out. He talks himself about getting out on the grass. He talks about how much he struggled during COVID for the simple reason that he couldn't get out to watch matches and speak to scouts who aren't even, famous to us. The youth scouts or the random people that you see on the circuit that aren't familiar to the rest of us. But Mowbray has a real strong connection with all these different individuals in different places. And not getting to see those people during the pandemic really affected him. He was really struggling because the relationships just weren't the same.
Yeah. I mean, Sunderland was, and we'll get to this, how he integrates with a sporting director. I mean, I think that there were probably issues with Christian Speakman, who funnily enough, was at Birmingham as the youth guy, and was responsible partly for the rise of the Bellinghams, and of course Joe went up there. I just think maybe that there was a little bit of friction there about how things should be run, which was partly the reason he left. So yeah, I mean, he's got Craig Gardner at St Andrews, who's working with. He's been responsible for bringing some great loans, particularly for Manchester United, with his connections up there. But do you think Mowbray? I mean, he said yesterday in his initial media conference that he does want some input. So how do you think that might pan out? Working with a sport, not a sporting director, but a kind of somebody who's working above him, if you like, or alongside him. But he's saying he does want a part of that hands-on role.
Yeah, in theory, it shouldn't. It's a tough one to get to unpack this one, because in theory, it shouldn't really be He shouldn't. He doesn't want too much power on an executive level. He doesn't. He's always talked in the past about dealing with agents, and that side of the game really frustrates him. When you get into contracts and the nitty-gritty of numbers and those kinds of things, that's not his skill set. He likes to connect with people on an emotional level. As soon as you start talking numbers and budgets and that side of things, then I think that's a bit out of his wheelhouse and he's not comfortable with it. So he wouldn't want to do the whole job. But obviously, from a football perspective, I think he wants some input in terms of, I don't think he wants to just have players thrust upon him that he's had no say in whatsoever or things like that. I think he's very passionate about players and their attributes and skill sets. And he always likes to, he's very good at making connections between players who they should watch on video, because you're like this type of player. So he's clearly very in tune with what he sees in a player. And say a team needs a particular attribute for a right back, he'll go to, he'll when he coaches players, a lot of the time he likes to give them past superstars in their position. Now, here's some videos. Go away and watch these videos and see what he does in the game. So he's very in tune with what each player in each position brings. So that by definition, you're thinking, okay, he'll also like to have an input on who gets to come into the team. If he sees something's missing and somebody's buying another square peg for a round hole instead of what he sees as the obvious solution, then I imagine that's where he would want the input.
Yeah. You wrote an excellent piece on Twitter again. Was it yesterday? I think it was. And you described Tony Mowbray to Birmingham as an ideal match on many levels. Common sense prevailing. Mowbray is not the complete package, but he doesn't need to be. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think. I mean, trying to gauge the temperature of Blues fans at the moment, and the reaction to the Rooney appointment was, and what the reaction is now, is that I don't think first and foremost it doesn't seem as though Blues fans are thinking about promotion in any immediate time frame. Well, if that's not the absolute priority, then I think Mowbray brings everything else to the table that you could want. I think he's a safe pair of hands. There's not many managers, I don't think, that are both a safe pair of hands and play expressive football. Most of these safe managers are the ones that play defensive football, get bodies behind the ball, are good on the counter-attack. Your Gary Rowett type managers are a safe pair of hands normally. There's not many around that like to play expressive football, but you can also be comfortable that we're not going to get into any real trouble with this manager. Because sometimes you can put a manager in that likes to play expressive football. If you got the wrong players, it can go south very quickly. But with Mowbray, I don't think that's the case. I think he's been round the block so many times now. He's done this so many times, and he's his last few jobs, he's shown he can get players playing quite quickly.
Yeah, it's just Birmingham played Sunderland recently, and they beat us 3-1. And he said in the media conference yesterday that he noticed that on the transition, there was massive space behind. And that was so typical of the Rooney thing, running before you can walk, great going forward on occasion, but then just hopeless at the back because the players the players couldn't do it, simple as that. And I did notice, he made it very clear yesterday that, you don't do the square pegs and round holes thing. You play to suit what your squad can do, common sense, really. How much do you think that counts in his favour, being straight with the players?
Well, I think it's one of the main things we can all buy into with Mowbray is he's such an authentic guy, and what you see is what you get, and there's nothing hidden in terms of the way he deals with people. And I think this is also like a self above tribe thing, because I think when people they're not dishonest, or keep things to themselves and don't share what's going on for themselves and what they're upset about, it's generally because they're being polite to not upset the tribe. When people withhold information, it's usually because of how they think that information is going to be received. So this is all kind of goes hand in hand with a self-above tribe. It's the dynamics of a tribe. If there's a code, an unspoken code of conduct, if people aren't being honest about themselves and about how they feel about a situation, it's usually because they don't want to upset someone. And I think he's just making clear these are the dynamics. I want you to be honest with me, because I don't really go in for all this tribe stuff myself. Of everybody's got to be a certain way and we've all got to behave the same way. I understand that you're an individual, I'm an individual, so I want to know what type of individual you are, and we'll make it work for you as well as me.
Yeah, and yet when he first came in, he said, when he introduced you, he doesn't go in there and make a big speech and say, this is what we're going to do. He talked about his shortcomings, that made them aware of his frailties, which really surprised me. That, it's sort of very disarming introduction. Does that fit in with what your kind of profile?
Well, I mean, as opening press conferences go, I listened to the first one. I've not listened to the Swansea build-up press conference, but the one of his unveiling his first interview with the club channel was a wonderful. It's like 7 or 8 minutes, and as a personality typology perspective, it was like the perfect interview. He's like literally just spoke all his functions, the way his mind works. He was just so upfront and honest. He's reached a stage now, I think, in his career. He's been around the block so many times. He understands his own job and himself so well that, he just knows himself. He just knows exactly everything from his strengths to his weaknesses. And, it's not... But maybe in his younger years, you might go about the job and think you can do things that you can't do. And I think he's just reached the age where he knows exactly now when he encounters a problem, this is not one that I can solve. Who can solve it for me?
Yeah, it's a bit like as if the pressure's off him now. I mean, he's into his seventh decade, 60 years old. Do you think there's for managers who have been reasonably successful, and you made the point in your article this week on Twitter X that his average in the Championship over 9 seasons is 9th place, which is pretty good, which is far better than Blues have managed the last decade, pretty much. But is there a sell-by date, do you think, for managers who get to that age, who have had success? And as he says, I've been in the game as a manager, I had a player for 20 years each. Is there a sell-by date, do you think?
I think for some managers there is. I don't think there is for Mowbray. I'd put Mowbray more in the Roy Hodgson, Neil Warnock type category of managers who get better. The managers that have a sell-by date tend to be the ones that like to have a certain way that they always do things, go into a club and like to get control, and it has to be their way. Don't adapt to the people around them. The ones that are more adaptable and the ones that more kind of tend to go with the flow and go into a workplace and understand that a new generation comes through and they're different to the last generation. So I'm not going to try to make them be like the last generation. That I understand that times have changed. I've heard Mowbray talk funnily about players with beards. He doesn't get why people would not. He's almost like, why would you want a beard? Why would you want all this hair over your face? It's like, it's just like, but it's this kind of almost Uncle Tony, granddad type thing going on that it's like, he knows that the new generation are different, but I've not got a problem with it. It's like, I'm not going to try to make them start shaving, or I'm not going to try to change people in any way. It's just an understanding and moving with the times and adapting. So I think on that front, I think he'll be fine. I think he's got many more years left in him as a coach and a manager.
Yeah, he had a little thing about the food yesterday. He went up very disarming, about how wonderful it was, and getting that whole, not just the players, but the whole club and the journalists who he sort of said, I like the journalists around here, getting everybody on board. Certain managers I can name, Harry Redknapp, Terry Venables. Once you get the media on side, you're absolutely laughing. Lose them and you're in big trouble, as Wayne Rooney found out. And you mentioned Neil Warnock there as well, who was asked, I think, the day after Rooney went, what's this game all about, really, Neil? And how old's Warnock now? Is he 70 plus? Must be, is he?
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
He said it's simple. It's about man management. You get that right, that's it. They've all got the basic grasp of tactics, but if you get man managing everyone on side, you're laughing, aren't you? That is it. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always have this thing when it comes to tactics and motivation or emotions and logic, is that, no, it doesn't matter how good a game plan is in the world. If the players don't buy in, you're not going to win with it. But even the worst game plan in the world with total buy-in from the players has got a chance. Because players can solve problems themselves on a pitch, even if the game plan isn't working. If the willingness is there to do so, then they can paper over the cracks of a system, but I don't think it works the other way around. If you don't have the players on side, it doesn't matter how good your tactics are, the best system in the world can fail.
Yeah, it's a respect thing, isn't it, as well? I mean, you talk about longevity and some sort of Jose, people like that, fantastic initial, but then just seems to have just sort of faded slowly. But it is, everyone's different, aren't they? And ultimately, if the results aren't there, then that pressure really ramps up. So I think he'll be taking. I think you said in your piece, didn't you, that it's gradual. Gradual's the word here, because it's maybe not very long term. I mean, how do you, if you were the owners, how long would you be looking at someone like Mowbray for? I mean, gradual improvement's going to be playoffs within a couple of years, you would think, if not next season.
Yeah, I'm looking at Mowbray's track record. I'm looking at Birmingham's recent track record in the Championship. 17th is the highest in the last 7 seasons, is it? This being the 8th season. I think, they're on course to break that pattern with John Eustace. I think they will break it now with Mowbray. I think Mowbray will not hit the ground running necessarily, but I don't think he'll have any initial problems. I think he'll get things moving reasonably quickly. And if Blues are 20th now, I think they can get up to, borderline mid-table. But his track record in the last 2 seasons at this level, in 2 different sets of circumstances with 2 different types of clubs, in Blackburn and Sunderland, he's managed to get them on the cusp of the playoffs with Blackburn and into the playoffs with Sunderland. I think next season, his first full season, I would expect Birmingham to be in that playoff conversation for most of the season. And then I think that's when it possibly reaches a point where, okay, now the owners are going to take stock. Are we going to make the top 6 this season? Do we think that this is going fast enough now that even if we don't get up through the playoffs in this first full season, do we trust the manager to try and get us promotion next season? That's when they'll start asking those kinds of questions about and taking a look. I notice his contract is 2.5 years, which sounds about right. I think he's almost guaranteed to get 1.5 years. And depending on how good next season is, whether he goes to see through the remainder of that contract, or it's not a huge amount to pay off if he goes early, but it's almost like a thank you if he does go early, that things have turned around or whatever. So I think next season I would expect Birmingham to be in and around the playoff conversation.
Indeed. Swansea to start with, and you've been working on Liam Williams has come in there. What do you know about him? Is it progressive?
Yeah, he's very much about control of the process. He's very similar to, worked alongside Russell Martin, previous Swansea boss, of course, and they've worked together at MK Dons, and very similar ideas on how the game should be played. Interestingly, I just listening to that press conference before we had the call, There was a remark he made. I think Williams isn't necessarily comfortable coming in, hitting from a standing start in the middle of the season. He's a sort of manager that would love a pre-season to get his ideas across. He talks about, it's almost like it was a bit of an over-the-top remark, which made me laugh, but it's almost like we're trying to put the wings on the plane after it's taken off, which sounds a bit extreme, but that's how he feels about the chaos of just being parachuted into a team mid-season and suddenly having to try and get his ideas across. Yeah. So it could be interesting between now and the end of the season. I don't think it's a bad thing as a first game. The two, I'd more be inclined to favour Mowbray's managerial style from a standing start in the middle of the season than Luke Williams.
Planes and wings coming off. I don't know if you've seen the Society of the Snow and the Channel 5 documentary about the Andes plane crash guys. Incredible, which was a rugby team. Talk about teamwork. It's a great watch, that, and an incredible story. I've met the guy as well, who was the hero of that amazing story from 50 odd years ago. Just before we go, big talk yesterday about, and what we've been talking about tribe and self and managerial styles. Very sad news about Sven-Goran Eriksson, who I got to know quite well over the years with England. And interesting that everyone had a thought about him yesterday, but nobody could really put their finger on his style, really, apart from the fact that it was very quietly spoken, yet always seemed to be quite effective, apart from England not winning what they maybe should have done. But what do you make of all that?
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, Sven. I studied him a lot when he came to Man City in 2007, was it? I think. There was a few books that came out around the time of his England days. So when he got the City job, I went, I wanted to learn more about him, and yeah, it's quite abstract. He was always a hard character to get your head around. It's like people used to think, well, what actually does he do? But like I put a tweet out yesterday. It's like all these big name players and all the beautiful women that he had in his life, and it's like they all fell for something. There was a charm about him, and it's hard to put your finger on, but it's to do with emotions. It's to do with emotional intelligence and empathy and connection with people. It was almost effortless for him, and it was almost like a sense of, they say elite athletes perform at the best when they're relaxed, and I just think Sven had this way about him that just made everybody just ridiculously relaxed, even though they were going to play in it, what might be some of the biggest games of their lives. They'd just be really relaxed about it because of his general demeanour and his style.
Even though he was more Ian Duncan Smith than Winston Churchill, as Gareth Southgate famously said in that World Cup quarterfinal in Shizuoka 22 years ago. Is Mowbray and Ian Duncan Smith, or was it Churchill, somewhere in between?
Well, I think, yeah, probably somewhere in between. He's very passionate in that he gets the emotions pumping, but not in a way of the importance of the game, but more in the way of how lucky we are to be living this lifestyle and having, this opportunity to play this game. And, he's very, very romantic in, almost going back to his childhood of his dreams and aspirations to be a footballer, and now we get to live this life. And I think he just constantly reminds his players of that. I think that in itself can be quite relaxing and make you feel a sense of opportunity rather than pressure.
Even down to the media conference yesterday when his childhood came up for one of the questions. What it's like when the first people trying to ask different questions to get something different from the usual standard answers. And there was a nice little section, so apart from the food and stuff, when he got to someone asked him about his wife was going to be going to New York with him. Had this job not come up, and how would she react? And then he went back to his childhood and how his boys reacted with him, and he said that his father would have taken a belt off to him, and how at times had changed and all the rest of it. And yet, but which made you think he's a very old school figure. But he said, I'm not a dour Tony Mowbray. I'm actually quite a forward thinker. So it's a real it's going to be fascinating, I think, to see the ride. Just finally from you, Mike, where do you think they'll finish? I mean, 20th and drop like a stone under Rooney, but as he said, I mean, if you win 3 games in a row in this division, you can fly up the table, can't you?
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that there will be a bit of a run at some stage. I don't think it'll get. You know, I think the three teams at the bottom are in big trouble anyway. So I think most of the teams just above the dotted line are not as. The situation is not as precarious as it might have been in other seasons. But I think Blues will get a run of results at some point. Maybe not straight out of the gate, but in a month or two, I think things will fall into place and there'll be a mini surge up the table. I'd say from this position now, it's probably going to be bottom half, but probably more 13th or 14th than 19th or 20th.
Yeah, but looking up rather than down, which is
Absolutely.
got to be a good thing, which certainly wasn't the case under Wayne Rooney. Mike, really great to see. What have you got lined up? You got more profiles that people can get across on your Twitter handle?
Yeah, I'm looking at a few guys at the moment. Gary Calvert at Exeter, Chris Wilde at Sheffield United, Maurizio Pochettino. Those are the guys I've been looking at most recently. I might take a bit more of a look at Luke Williams now as well. He's gone in at Swansea.
Well, I hope he gets thrashed in his first game. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be a thrill ride as always. Great to speak to you, Mike. Happy New Year, a bit belatedly, but enjoy the sunshine in Spain, which is where you are now. Yeah.
Yeah, Valencia. Yeah, not sunny at the moment though, but won't be long. Maybe only a month or two here until it gets sunny again.
Yeah, brilliant. Great to speak again. Thanks very much. And if you like what you've watched, please subscribe and all the rest. And to all Blues fans, keep right on.